Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and today I'm doing my January wrap-up. I know it's a little bit late, but I did have surgery in late January, so I'm still recovering, trying to get back into filming videos when I feel up to it. But surgery went well and I'm overall feeling better, just taking it one day at a time. So for my wrap-ups, I like to start from my least favorite to my favorite book of the month. I read 7 books in the month of January. Overall, it was a pretty good month. I did have a 2.5-star read, but I did have quite a few 4-star reads. I read multiple genres, so a thriller, romance, cozy fantasy, horror, and sci-fi. So yeah, overall, pretty good, solid start of the year. So my least favorite book of January was Endless Night by Richard Laymon. I am participating in a Year of Laymon that is hosted by very casual readathon hosted by Kelsey from Slime and Slashers, where we read a Richard Laymon book a month. And January was pick your own Laymon book, and I chose Endless Night. And wow, where to begin? So this was my first Richard Laymon book. He is a horror author, very divisive horror author, and now I totally see why. So in this book, we are following Jody. She is 16 years old, and in the beginning, it starts off very good. It is a home invasion horror. It starts off as a home invasion horror. Jody is spending the night at her best friend's house, and her best friend is hearing like noises. It sounds like someone's in her house. And so she goes out to investigate and immediately gets speared on some weapon. And then Jody realizes that they obviously are in big trouble. And there is a group of killers in this house. And so she tries to get to her best friend's little brother, his room, to see if he's still alive. The brother's name is Andy. She does get there. He is still alive. And so they have to figure out how to get out of this house away from these killers. And it started off, like I said, very, very promising. I was very invested. Felt that like anxiety you have when you're reading a home invasion book. It's not like the best written book, I'll say. He's not like this amazing writer, but there's definitely that tension. And then it quickly becomes very strange. So what I realized immediately with Richard Laymon is he likes to completely over-sexualize his characters. And in this book, because we have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, it is extremely uncomfortable to read. There's no like sex between them or anything like that, but it's just the comments that these characters make. I mean, yes, there's a 12-year-old, obviously there's like hormonal stuff going on, you know, preteen brain, like I get that, but written by, I don't know how old this man was when he wrote this book, but it just becomes very like perverted. Yeah, that's what I'll say. So that's my biggest gripe, honestly, with Richard Laymon's writing. At this point, I have read 2 of his books, and they're good horror books. I don't know what's defined as extreme horror, but I definitely would not say, like, if you're someone who likes horror books and you typically read, like, Grady Hendrix or Darcy Coates or even Stephen King, this is way past that. This is way past that. So it's like I said, very uncomfortable at times to read. It's gruesome. So let me keep going on about what it's about. So Jody and Andy do get out of the house, but the group of killers end up escaping. All of them except one of them is left behind because he has to try to finish the job and kill Andy and Jody, or his group of killers will come after him and kill him and his family. That's like the pact that they have. They've been killing for many, many years. This book is told from Jody's point of view, as well as Simon, who is the killer that's left behind trying to get to them. He is obsessed with Jody. Like I said, she's 16 years old. This is a grown-ass man, and the thoughts that are in his head are very disturbing. Simon is one of the most despicable characters that I've ever read, and you are in his brain for a lot of this book. This book is very long. Too long, that's another complaint. I feel like this is way too long. There's no audiobook for this, so I read this physically, and I didn't DNF it. So, I mean, there was something there that was keeping my attention. I really wanted to see how this ended. And if this wasn't so over-sexualized and very cringy at times with some of the thoughts that this Simon character had, towards Jody. I feel like I probably would have liked this a lot more. Overall, I think the story itself and the tension and, you know, Simon trying to get to them and all of the things that happened is very good. I was completely interested in it. Like I said, I really wanted to see the ending of it, but man, Richard Laymon makes you feel like he's like a perverted old man writing these books, or this book specifically. And it happens again in the second book that I read by him, Without Children. But yeah, so my first impression is I don't know yet if I'm going to continue on with Richard Laymon books, but yeah, so that's what I'll say about this. So 2.5 stars. Also, I think this is considered splatterpunk, which I don't think I've ever read splatterpunk, but I am intrigued. I definitely want to read more of it because I do like, this book totally felt like a B-movie slasher, 100%. And I did, like I said, enjoy those parts of it. So I would love if anyone has any recommendations for like splatterpunk horror books, please let me know down below, because I don't mind there being, also, sorry, I'm like all over the place with this one, but there's also rape in this, not with the 16-year-old, but there is other characters, lots of other characters that get killed. So there is rape. So just trigger warning for that. I mean, this book is one big trigger warning, but it's specifically for that. I don't mind if you're recommending things to me. I don't mind, like, I don't have any triggers. I just don't like children to be sexualized. It's disgusting. Sorry, one more thing about Endless Night. I do also want to mention I watched a great review on this book from Ollie from Criminali's channel. I will post the video down below if you're interested in hearing a little bit more about Richard Laymon, because he also gives a little bit of history about the author himself. It's just a fantastic video, so please check that out as well if you're interested in Richard Laymon at all. Next up is Falling by TJ Newman. This is a thriller book, and I was quite a bit disappointed by this one because last year I read Drowning by this author, and it was one of my favorite books of 2023. So I went into this one fully expecting it to be at least a 4 or 5 star book, and not so much. In this book, we are following a pilot, and 30 minutes before they take off, he receives notification that his family is being held hostage and that he must crash the plane with over 100 passengers on it or his family will be killed. And it's fast-paced, the chapters are quick, there's multiple points of view, and I always like to mention the author's experience as a flight attendant definitely lends a lot to her storylines, makes them very realistic. But my biggest gripe with this book is that the motive behind the, I guess, killers or the people that are person that is holding the pilot's family hostage is very cliche and stereotypical, and I didn't like it at all. Like, I really didn't like it. I almost DNF'd this book when I found out. I was like, oh no. So that's my biggest issue. I don't want to spoil anything, but I just really did not like the motive of the person that's doing all of this. I would recommend it as a fast-paced thriller, that takes place on a plane if you're interested in that. I think it's just my personal preference. I didn't like the motive of the reason why it was happening. It just really rubbed me the wrong way. But yeah, so 3 stars for this one. Next up is In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. I gave this book 3.5 stars. This is a sci-fi book, and it revolves around Giovanni. He is an android living in a treehouse with a human, Victor, that he raised, and 2 robots. Rambo is a little vacuum robot. I pictured him as a little Roomba sized robot, and then also we have like a medical nurse type robot that's called Nurse Ratchet. The robots are absolutely hilarious. The humor in this book is very entertaining. It's overall very heartwarming. You definitely get like a Pinocchio and Wizard of Oz vibe from it. So Victor, the human, he likes to go to this place where there's a bunch of like salvage parts, kind of like a scrapyard, and he finds different pieces and likes to kind of salvage parts and puts things back together. And he finds Hap, who is an android similar to Giovanni, puts him back together, and some secrets that Giovanni has been keeping from Victor comes to light, and then it becomes kind of a rescue mission with trying to save Giovanni and Gio, they call him in the book. And Overall, I liked this book a lot. This was an arc that I had to try to get to. It's from last year, but I really enjoyed the first half of the book. While I was reading it, I was like, oh, this is probably going to be like a 4 or 5 star book. And then once they get into kind of the rescue mission portion of it, the second half of the book, the pacing just slowed down a lot for me. They get to this character who's very much Wizard of Oz, like very eccentric and funny, but they're there for quite a while, and I was getting extremely bored with that part of it. And then after the rescue mission, I also just really didn't love the ending. It was just something about the ending that kind of brought the book down, because the beginning of it was so funny and heartwarming and hilarious, and they go on this journey and then they come back, and it's very, I felt melancholy. So overall, I did enjoy it. I think it's very heartwarming. There's some great messages in it with found family and love. Initially, Victor is labeled as asexual, so I liked that that was explored as well. But then with that, there's these very extreme sexual jokes that are constantly made by the little robots in this that initially were very funny, and then it became weird. So that, and it's very vivid in my mind. I remember reading through it and I'm like, man, this is getting repetitive and annoying. Like, it was funny the first time, but it's not so funny anymore. That's kind of something that just irked me a little bit. But overall, I thought it was a great book. TJ Klune just does a great job of creating these worlds and these characters, and the humor that he has in his books. I love it. So I'll definitely read more from him. So 3.5 stars. Next up is Dreamcatcher by Stephen King. This is a reread for me. I read this initially when it first came out. I think this came out in 2001. Yeah, so 2001, I read this when it came out, and I remember really loving it. I had not read a lot of Stephen King books to compare this to. And so I just really wanted to reread it and see if I still loved it as much, because this one is not a very high rated Stephen King book. And I always wondered, like, why didn't everybody love this? I think the big part of it for this also being a well-loved book in my memory is because the movie that came out had Donnie Wahlberg in it. I was a huge New Kids on the Block fan, and there was just so much hype around that. And I was very excited. So that memory is very vivid for me, super nostalgic. So I couldn't wait to reread this. Having said all that, did not love it as much as I remember it the second time around. This book is Stephen King's like alien horror, and we are following 4 friends. Each one of them has like life issues that they're going through. One of them is an alcoholic, one of them is recently divorced, one of them is suicidal, and I can't remember what the 4th one's issue was, but they typically get together and go to a cabin in Maine where they go hunting, they drink, they joke, you know, do men stuff in this cabin. These 4 friends have a telepathic connection that stems from becoming friends with a young boy when they were younger in middle school. I think it was around middle school, named Duddits. He has Down syndrome. Trigger warning for the R word. This was from early 2000s, so the R word, unfortunately, was still being used quite a bit, and of course, Stephen King used the hell out of it in this book. So their friend Duddits, he has Down syndrome. They met him because he was being bullied, and they all came to rescue him, basically, and they formed a connection ever since then. And Duddits has some special abilities that gives them all a connection between all of them with telepathy. So while they're at this cabin, 2 of them go off to get supplies at like a general store a few miles away, and then 2 of them are out hunting. It's starting to snow right before they get to leave. Jonesy, one of the friends, he is up in the tree. He sees what he initially thinks is a deer, an animal. He's getting ready to try and shoot it, and he realizes it's a man. And this man is very disoriented. He seems to be confused. He's saying he lost his friends. So they bring him back to the cabin. When they bring him back to the cabin, they quickly realize there's something seriously wrong with him. In, you know, Stephen King style, the alien that is in this man, one of the signs of an alien infestation in a human is a lot of farting and burping. So there are a lot of fart jokes in this. Just a warning right there for you if you're not into that. Lots of sounds and gruesome scenes in this one. Stephen King did a very good job of describing things that make you cringe, absolutely. And smells. the way he describes the smells, I mean, I kind of got a little nauseous a couple times. But so yeah, they quickly realize there's something severely wrong. And then it goes from there. There's also a military aspect of it from US government. They realize that or have known that there's aliens, and so they're trying to contain the situation. And Duddits, of course, plays a big part in this, and that's all I'll say. I don't want to give too much away. Overall, I still really like this book. I like aliens, so it's hard for me to say that I didn't enjoy it. I definitely enjoyed it. I just didn't enjoy it quite as much as I remembered the second time around. So 3.5 stars. Still a great Stephen King book to me to add to your Stephen King TBR if you're making your way through his books, especially if you like aliens, because yeah. But it can get gruesome and weird with his descriptions, so I'll say that. I did rewatch the movie. It definitely did not stand the test of time. It's not the greatest movie, but I rewatched it. I mean, there were certain parts that I enjoyed. I think some of the characters were very funny, and then there's certain parts that I just thought was terrible. But I'm glad that I did it, at least for the nostalgia reasons. Next up, we are heading into the 4-star books that I read in the month of January, and the first one is Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. And I really had a fun time with this. I did not love it as much as the first book. I don't want to go into too much detail, obviously, because it's a sequel, but we are following Emily. She is a professor at Cambridge, and fellow Professor Wendell Bambleby is right along with her, and we follow their crazy shenanigans. I did really love the first half of this book. It starts out pretty fast-paced. There's like a fairy group of assassins that try to take out Wendell. That was pretty funny and entertaining. Of course, Wendell's humor and obsession with tidiness is still very, very funny to me. In this book, Emily is researching or trying to put together a map of the fairy realms in this one. What I struggled with is there is like a missing person element to this that became a little boring to me. Also, we have some new characters in this. We are introduced to Emily's niece, who follows her along on a mission. I don't want to say what she does, but they go on a little mission. And that part of it kind of dragged on a little bit to me as well. So again, didn't love it as much. I did like that there were some appearances from characters from the first book. And there's a new, I think it's a fairy. I can't remember what his name. There's a new little creature character. I think it's a fairy that is very funny and rude. But yeah, I love this world that Heather Fawcett has created. I loved the ending. I can't wait to see what happens in the third book. But yeah, this one definitely was not my favorite. Still love the first book more. Next up is Frostbite by Angela Sylvaine. This is a sci-fi alien horror, and I had a really fun time with this one. This book takes place in 1997 in North Dakota at a trailer park. And we are following Laymon, and while she is home in her trailer, a comet lands in the back of her trailer, and she is the first person on the scene. And she sees these little black wormy things squirming around, and come to find out they are little alien worms. Shortly after she gets back home, she realizes that the prairie dogs that are normally hibernating this time of year are acting very, very strange. And this was fun. This was a fun time. The prairie dogs are infected with little alien worms. They are very vicious. And if the alien worms gets into humans, humans will lose their memory and also become very, very vicious. So this town is being quarantined. No one can leave. And Laymon is trying to escape with her mom, who has Alzheimer's. Laymon is also with her best friend, Nate. They realize they can't get out of this town. So of course they try to save it because they realize what is actually happening and that there's aliens, these little worm aliens. Media isn't believing them. The scientists at the comet site where the crash happened won't believe them, so they have to try to figure things out on their own. This book can get pretty gruesome with the deaths that happen in it, so I wasn't expecting that. I enjoyed that. The 90s vibes were definitely there. The TV shows that they mentioned, I think she was eating Pop-Tarts, the way she described certain foods in it. So definitely has the 90s vibes. There's also a religious cult going on in here that Laymon and Nate have to like kind of try to navigate around as well, because they have their own intentions and thoughts about what is going on. You know, of course, they probably think it's the end of times. So yeah, this was fun. I had a great time with this. I love this cover as well. I'm so glad that I read it. It takes place right around Christmas. It's a perfect book to read in the winter, but it's also a perfect book to read if you are feeling nostalgic, because like I said, it definitely has 90s vibes in it. So I highly recommend this, especially if you like sci-fi alien horror. And my favorite book of January was completely unexpected. It was an arc that I just decided to read on a whim because it came out in December. But it was A Second Chance Year by Melissa Weisner. I really loved this book. It was such a cute romance. In it, we are following Sadie. She has just lost her boyfriend, her apartment, and her job. She is staying at her brother's best friend's house or apartment, and she's just really struggling. She feels like things that she did herself were the reason why she's lost everything. And on New Year's Eve, she goes to a party, this weird party. I think it's like a circus theme party. And she finds a fortune teller that agrees to grant her a wish. So she wishes to replay the last year of her life because she feels like if she tamed her personality down and kind of molded herself to be what her boyfriend and her boss wanted her to be, her life would still be what it was this time last year. So after the party, Sadie goes back to her brother's best friend, whose name is Jacob, goes back to the apartment. She's feeling really down on herself. Jacob's trying to give her, a pep talk. He's very introverted to himself. They haven't really had very many interactions. It's her brother's best friend. But of course, on this night, Jacob kisses her and he quickly apologizes because he feels horrible. So she ends up going to sleep and she's got all these thoughts in her head, and she wakes up the next day and it is 1 year before. She does get to replay the last year, but meanwhile, she can't stop thinking, of course, about the kiss with Jacob. And I loved it. It was so cute. There's humor in it. There is a part of it where there's a Me Too almost movement that happens in it that I really loved. It was so well done. And Sadie navigating through this second chance that she gets and realizing that, no, I shouldn't have to change who I am to please other people and water down my own personality. So it's a really cool character development for Sadie. Then, of course, with the romance with Jacob, I love Jacob's character as well. It gave me all the warm and fuzzies that I love getting from romance books. So, very pleasant surprise for me. So there's all of the books that I read in the month of January. I feel like it was a great start to the year. Let me know down below, how is your 2024 shaping out so far with the books that you've read? Have you had any 5-star reads? I did not have any 5-star reads in January, but I have already had, I think, 3 or 4 in February. I mean, I'm on leave for recovery from surgery, so I've read, I think 14 books at this point in February, but I don't even know if I didn't have that many 5-star reads by 6-7 months into the year last year. So I'm very, very happy with my reading so far this year, but I'd love to hear from you down below. Let me know how your year is going so far. As always, thank you guys for hanging out with me, and I will see you again soon. See ya.